Your attention, please. Paul and Alex are required to proceed to the gate immediately.
What?
No way.
What is happening here?
This is the last call for the Layovers podcast.
Really?
Come on, man. This is our thing. We got this.
Oh, yeah.
And we made it.
Of course, geeks.
Flight 68 to... How do we say this, Alex? Soekarno Hatta International Airport.
Very good.
I have no idea.
I'm going to take your word for it that that's correct.
Don't take it. I have no idea. That's the international airport in Jakarta, Indonesia, which I was at now a week ago. We are recording today on Thursday, March 8th.
I cannot wait for you to tell this story.
You've been also doing a few travels. I think you've been to Dubai, if I remember correctly.
Yep, that's right. Very brief. I'm not traveling too much because of our recent family arrival. But yes, I nipped to Dubai with Emirates, and that was great.
Yeah, we'll talk about that as well. The plan was to record much earlier, but we've been snowed in the UK.
Yes.
I mean, today, there's no more snow. It's fine. I think the snow now, the big situation is on the East Coast. I think Boston is about to cancel every single flight they possibly have.
Yeah, they're not having fun over there.
But yeah, we've been having quite issues. Actually, your kids they didn't have any school, which is why we actually couldn't record.
Yeah, 4 days they were off. It was bad down here in southern England, and I know that a lot of the rest of the country is feeling it now, but it was bad.
It was actually bad all over Europe. Because, Geneva closed, Amsterdam closed for a while. There were other disruptions, I think, in Poland as well.
Sweden.
For once, it's not like just mocking the UK. Although, of course, it was a grand exaggeration here in London, because here in London, the snow was there was nothing compared to what you guys had, or even worse, what the north of England and Scotland had, which was like massive. I mean, the whole thing was closed. But Heathrow kind of held up pretty well for once, so we're not going to complain, right?
Yeah, which again, I mean, doesn't really answer any of the questions that we've had about Heathrow's ability to deal with snow, because there was a lot of snow and they did okay. But what was it? I don't know, 3 or 4 months ago, there was a little bit of snow and the whole thing just shut down.
So my plan was to do Charlotte, the airport, for this episode before I actually went to Jakarta. But now that this memory is fresh, I want to do Jakarta.
Yeah.
Why? And I'll talk about, because probably Charlotte was going to be the next episode. Because I realized just after we finished recording Philadelphia, in which episode I said I've never been to Philadelphia, that I actually had been to Philadelphia. So I actually remember now stuff that I should have said during the episode of Philadelphia. So Paul, next time, make sure to check actually your past flight history before actually recording an episode. So it was actually with US Airways. So we're talking about a different era almost, right? And I went through Charlotte before going to Philadelphia. So I'll mention that in the next episode. So today, Jakarta. There's going to be a lot about Indonesia, obviously, in this episode. I'm going to babble a bit. I already apologize to our listeners that, especially those who you keep telling, I think, who was it? I think it was our friend Sunil at Glucode, who said that even though he's been listening to all the episodes, sometimes when he takes a flight, and he flies a lot, way more than we do, I think, actually, he's re-listening to past episodes.
Wow. Even I don't do that.
Yeah, well, I really listen to ourselves because I'm like, gosh, I wish I could have said that differently.
Yeah.
So, Jakarta, I hinted at it. I wanted to try Garuda, and I was able, that's the beauty of being a consultant and having flexible clients, to find something that both quenched my thirst for trying Garuda and also making sense because the flight had been paid by a client. I actually didn't go to Jakarta. I went there for almost a day, but my main destination was Seoul. So yes, it doesn't make actually a lot of sense to go to Seoul by using Garuda routing via Jakarta, because that's the longest flight you can have from London is actually to Indonesia. If I'm not mistaken, that's 7,200 miles, more than that, almost 7,300 miles. That's 13 hours and 30 minutes on the way there, and the way back We did 14 hours and 20 minutes, I think. So it's a really long flight.
Yeah, it is.
It's the longest flight I've ever done in terms of miles, but it's not the longest flight I've ever done in terms of time spent.
That's interesting, isn't it? That they don't always sync up.
I think the longest flight I've ever done time-wise was Asiana, was 2 years ago. I think that was the longest. I think it was 16 hours or something. I mean, oh my God, yeah, exactly. So I'm going to talk about Garuda. I'm going to talk about my flight. And at the end, of course, of the show, I'm going to talk a bit about the airport as well. We've had actually some news about the airport. It was not always glowing. I think, remember, we said that, was it the runway that was sinking or something?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, there was a few issues. Or was that Bangkok? Or was it both?
Oh, I can't remember now. Maybe you're right.
There's a few airports in Asia that have had subsidence problems with terminals or runways or otherwise very important airport infrastructure. Operationally dependent, I believe the euphemism is.
So let's start with Garuda itself. We mentioned Garuda a few times in the show. We're talking about a year or 2 years ago now. And I actually remember, I don't know if it was recorded, if I left it on the cutting floor, or if it was just you and me chatting outside of recording a show. When I had mentioned Garuda, you had came back to me by saying, oh, my father would not fly them because they had a very, really bad reputation, right?
Yeah, as does Indonesian aviation in general. But yeah, that was definitely a philosophy of his in the 80s and 90s.
Because that was the worst time. So Garuda was born, it's not one of the oldest airlines, it was born just after the Second World War in 1947. It was actually called KLM at the beginning. Yeah. KLM Interinsulair Bedrijf. Guys, my Dutch friends, I'm sorry, I have no idea how you say that. You'll correct us in the next episode. So KLM, because, it was the Dutch East Indies, that's the, they were colonized. I learned something, by the way. I didn't realize that. I was there and was like, they drive on the same side that we drive in the UK. And I was like, but this is not an English colony. And I actually learned that in the Netherlands, they used to drive also on this side, and they switched just in the 50s, just after the end of the colonies. This is why Indonesia still drives on the same side as we drive in the UK, Australia, Japan, etc. I had no idea.
There you go.
So, very quickly changed his name to Garuda International. The name comes from, and that's interesting, it's a largest Muslim country in the world. But the name actually comes from Hinduism, for some reason. Really? Garuda, it's a bird. The name was actually derived from a poem by a Javanese scholar. I'm Garuda, Vishnu's bird. I mean, of course, a bird, because we're talking about an airline. Yeah. And Vishnu is the second god in the Hindu triumvirate. Three gods, the other two are Brahma and Shiva. And the livery, the current one, all the older ones, all have this idea of a bird. It's a bit, I'm overstretching here, it's a bit like Lufthansa, if you want. They also have a bird on their tail. The latest one is actually pretty cool. It's a schematic of a bird. It has these bluish tendencies. I really actually enjoy it. It used to be red, so totally different. So they went a completely different route. It was a pretty big airline. They went all over the world in the 70s, in the 80s, and then, like your father hinted at to you, they went through a really catastrophic era of...
I think as a symptom or result of their rapid growth, perhaps.
The worst times, I think, was the 90s. They were mismanagement. They had, no more money. They were overstretched. The airline seemingly were also used like almost like a pet project by the government, apparently. I don't know if that's true or not, but like there was, like really bad mismanagement. They even had, and it's more symbolic, but there was a murder in the flight by a Garuda crew. So it was a political murder. That's what the history says. I don't have the whole facts, so please, Indonesian friends, correct us if we're wrong. But there was like a murder in 2004. So
2004?
Yeah, off-duty crew who was in the flight poisoned a political activist who died on the flight for crying. Wow. Yeah, that's actually really, really bad. I think it was they slipped something in his drink, and I think they even refused to reroute the plane when the person was saying that he was feeling unwell. So this is not the downfall of the airline itself. It's just like the epitome of the catastrophic mismanagement and the problems they've been having, which led to the actual ban of the airline over European skies. So you couldn't fly Garuda up to 2010, actually. So we're talking about something really recent. We're not talking about something in the 70s. This is hence the bad reputation it still has and lingers to a lot of people, which I don't understand, especially your father, which has actually lived through all the bad years of Indonesia Garuda.
I mean, it's rare that an airline or any entity, frankly, that goes through such a sustained period of not being good to the point of people dying, gets to the end of it. But they have.
I will also add that, of course, if you look at the timing I just described, 2004, that was also right after 9/11. There has been the Bali,
the bombings, yeah,
and the earthquake. You remember the major earthquake in 2004, meaning people with less travel maybe were afraid to travel to Indonesia, and there was a lot of disruption, all added up to having this catastrophic outcome for the airline. So they regrouped. They basically shut down a lot of the routes they were using. They were going all over the world, and now they're a much smaller airline. They're not small, but much smaller than they used to be. Then they decided to do, and they called it the quantum leap. So no, this is not about planes going into different eras with, what was it, Sam? What was the name of the guy?
Yeah.
Ziggy, exactly, Ziggy, thank you. But they called it a quantum leap, and they said, okay, we have to regroup and build an airline that is worth of, because, Indonesia is the third largest country in the world, fourth largest country in the world in terms of population. It's a fast growing.
Huge.
We're talking 250, 270 million people. So it's really like a massive country. We're not talking about a small country. And they quite succeeded. So they bought 777-300ERs, which I flew actually twice. Interestingly, so twice on the same one, actually. It was the exact same aircraft on the way in and the way back. And they said, okay, we want to become a modern airline, and we want to attain 5-star Skytrax rating, which they did, which he ended up doing. It's one of the only 10 airlines.
That's not a small feat.
It's ANA, Asiana, Cathay, Etihad, Eva Air, Hainan, Lufthansa. Lufthansa just got it, actually, so it's really recent. Garuda had it before Lufthansa. Qatar and Singapore, obviously. To be fair, because some people criticize this 5-star award, Skytrax says some of the requirement can be also aspirational. So something that it's about to happen, something that they promise to do. It's not only that you have to have had all these requirements, and it shows. I will say that later on when I talk about my flight. There are still some inconsistencies in how certain older aircrafts compare to the newer one, for instance. But truth to be told, Qatar Airways, which is in that list, for instance, I've flown older aircrafts on, non-premium routes, basically not London, the US, and the fancy 350, etc. There's also discrepancies. So
it's also worth saying that Emirates are not a 5-star Skytrax airline, which I think says a lot about what it takes to be a 5-star airline.
Do you think? I'm not sure. Do you think airlines have to kind of ask to be rated? Because I'm really staggered that Emirates wouldn't be one.
I am too. But I haven't traveled enough in economy to understand if that's as good as a premium experience in Emirates. I have traveled in economy, and it was great both times I've done it, but perhaps there's an element there that's not as good as the economy product of the other 10 5-star airlines that might be holding them back. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe you're right. I've flown 8 times in economy on Emirates, and I was always I know one of the major things I always say about economy in Emirates is that they're very restrictive on the size of the luggage you can actually bring in. I think it's the size of Ryanair or smaller, so it's really kind of, come on, guys. But other than that, I always found the experience pretty good. I don't know if they have to request to be, audited in order to get it.
I don't know either. I know, as you say, that it's a contentious at best system, platform, whatever you want to call it. And is very divisive. So maybe there's some politics happening behind the scenes that we are unaware of.
Yeah, maybe you're right. The airport itself, I'll talk at the end, but the airport itself, which is part of the experience, is also in progress. You can see that it can be, and it probably will be, one of the leading airports of the world. I don't think it's there yet. Of course, I don't think Skytrax. I'm not sure how Skytrax does that, because boarding, you're not on the flight, but is that part of how they judge an airline? I'm not exactly sure. So maybe that could also influence the Anyway, so they have a fleet. I think they only have 10. I mean, only, but 10 777-300ER.
That's not a lot, though, is it?
No, it's not a lot, actually. One actually flies in SkyTeam, because that's the thing, that they're the SkyTeam airline. They have amazing promo fares all the time. I think this is where they are trying to that's not the right word. They're trying to gain again the status of like, guys, try us. You'll see we're not what we used to be. I think they need to do that to show that to people, because, Bali, for instance, is a very famous destination. And most people that I know that have flown to Bali, I've never even thought about Garuda. They will always fly Emirates or other airlines like this. So maybe they are trying to reattain the status that they used to have and show the world being like very transparent. Guys, try us. It's cheaper.
Yeah, it's classic price modeling, isn't it? If you want somebody to experience you got to make it almost a no-brainer to deviate from a habit and experience a new product or service.
Yeah, absolutely. They have a lot of 330s, actually. They even bought 14 330-900 Neos, so the new ones. They haven't been delivered. I think that will be delivered next year. Their main aircraft is the 737-800. Because, and that I realized, of course, when I was in Indonesia, it's a massive country, and a lot of Garuda is actually simply internal flights, because it's you really need to go places. It's if you look on the map, it's really like this oblong country of multiple islands.
Yeah, exactly. It's very dispersed, isn't it, right? But you need a really solid airline infrastructure to make the most of Indonesia.
They just retired their last 747. So my first time in Garuda, they didn't have it, or would have loved to try it. It was on October 5th, 2017. I think it was actually one of these flights for Haji, because since, again, Muslim country, they do a lot of flights. They also have all economy configurations on some of their aircraft just to shuttle a lot of the people in Saudi Arabia during the Hajj. It's one of the business model of the airline. It's not, I don't think it is actually now the biggest airline in Indonesia. I think I've seen like AirAsia all over the place.
They're growing like crazy.
I've seen all these, like we go to these airports where less used. You have all these airlines you have no idea they existed. I mean, AirAsia, of course, we know about it. AirAsia X, in that instance, the ones I've seen. But there's all these airlines I had no idea. I have like tons of pictures I took on the tarmac and like, who are these guys?
Yeah, there's so many of them. It's really staggering. I think that's also put so much pressure on Indonesia's aviation infrastructure that manifested itself in some tragedies. Hopefully they're going to fix that. But it's this huge growth in airline service there that's good and bad.
Fast growing. I think it's all these emerging countries in Southeast Asia grow super fast. So for instance, Philippine Airlines is still pretty bad. They're trying, but they're still pretty bad. I'm sorry, my Filipino friends. I've heard good things about Vietnam Airlines.
Yes.
Also SkyTeam. I've never flown them, but they also a booming one. They have brand new 350s doing a lot of routes as well. I want to try them once because they look pretty cool as well.
Yeah, they fly to London.
Yeah, they do, exactly. And there was a route I was looking into for the end of this month where Vietnam Airlines was... You remember the discussion we've been having? I think it was the last episode where I said, should I have moved my allegiance to another alliance? Because when I see the pricing, and as you know, guys, I go a lot to Southeast Asia. When I see the pricing the SkyTeam offers between Garuda, between Vietnam and others, but also simply KLM or Air France to Japan is actually pretty cheap right now. You have to do a stopover in Paris if you are flying from London like we are, Alex and I. But, we are price sensitive. We don't have a corporate that backs us up and just like, whatever, pay 5,000 euros for a flight.
No, we have to, and I think that's sort of our sport, is to find the biggest bang for our buck.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of capacity, growing capacity, and there's a lot of airlines that are available to us now to do these routes, which is great. It's a very exciting time.
So enough about Garuda. We'll switch and I'll come back to my flight. So we have a little bit of variety in the show. I'll be talking for 35 minutes nonstop, which will make Alex snooze in front of me. A few news. First... Lufthansa is apparently modifying their new livery. It's not even out, almost not out, and it's already thinking about changing it. What's up with that?
Yeah, I think this story's been
overblown.
grabbed. Yeah, I think it has. I think what they're doing is very sensible and pragmatic. They've put it on, I think, 2 airplanes, this new livery.
Yeah, 1747 and 1320 maybe?
I think so. And they're flying them around and they're seeing reaction, and they're also looking at the sort of practical elements of it. Does it reflect the brand and all of that? How easy is it to apply to planes and everything else? And they're taking those learnings and they are just modifying it a little bit before they apply it to the entire fleet, which is very, very sensible.
I think the major hiccup is not because if you were reading Twitter, everybody says, oh, they're trying to bring yellow back. No, yellow will not be back on the livery. Yellow is actually heavily used on the brand within the aircraft, on the signage in the airport, on the signage in the aircraft, on the uniforms, and I think on the menus and the chocolates and stuff like that. But the main thing that they've realized apparently is that the shade of blue they've been using, once it's actually in real life use, is too dark and it almost looks like black. And they want to go for something, I think, slightly lighter.
Yeah. 1 second. I have something to show you. It's pertinent to this conversation. Okay. So, interestingly, in the latest issue of Monocle, there was this insert, which is 51-page booklet on the rebranding.
No way.
Yeah, which the whole thought process, the logo, how it applies to the uniform, how they paint the planes, how it goes through to apps and all of that. And I thought that, what's his name?
Tyler Brule.
Tyler Brule, yeah, or Brule, or however you pronounce it. He's done phenomenal work with
Creme Brulee.
Creme Brulee, yeah. I like him. I like what he did for Swiss, but and so I assumed that they were something to do with this, but they're not.
Oh, so it's just an explanation of what the other guys have done, basically.
Yeah, and it's fascinating. I don't know. They should make it available online, but it's a really
Monocle is too hipster to be online, man.
Yeah, this is also true. But it's all the way through to like how it looks, how it will be reflected in the menus and all of that.
Oh wow!
It's not like they haven't thought about this. So I guess what I'm saying is that it's what they're doing is all part of a process.
Yeah, it's a process, and it's just recalibration. I think the headlines were overblown as they're rethinking. No, they're not rethinking. I think they're just adjusting, especially with real-life conditions. And that's happened, Even you just mentioned Swiss. That was a longer process. But Swiss, the original logo that was developed after the demise of Swissair and the birth of Swiss was a square by the same Tyler Brule. I really adored the entire brand. Was for me one of the best. I know it's very Euro white and it's been criticized. It's just basically simple.
No, it's great.
But the square, absolutely, there was 2 square next to each other. One with just a square, a red square, and the other one's Swiss International Airlines, because that's the actual name of the company. And once, after a few years of using it, they've realized that in the end of the day, what people really caught on was always the Swiss flag on the tail, so they reused that as the main logo. So now the logo, all the rest stays the same, but the main logo is a representation of the tail, the red tail with a white cross. Here in that case, maybe they realized that the blue was too dark and they just want to go lighter blue, and they only have 2 or 3 aircrafts repainted and they can still do it. That's it.
I honestly think you're only going to discover you can think about these things on paper until the cows come home, which they obviously have, but you're only ever going to learn those things when you're in real world conditions and you're in a gray, Frankfurt morning, and those lighting conditions make you go, you know what, I think it's too dark. And that's fine. Yeah. That's fine. I know we're getting into the mechanics of something and not into the airline world, but I admire them for being bold enough to make this call.
Yeah, and I really, really, really do like the new livery. I know that some of our listeners, because I've received some messages, emails, etc., say they meh, or they really don't like it. I personally really like the new, it's not the new brand, because it's really an evolution of what some of the existing. Yeah. Let's not exaggerate. They're using almost the same font. They're using pretty much everything very similar to because it's a great brand already, so they didn't really need
it. It really is.
Since we're on Star Alliance, that was a piece of news that we discussed a bit, you and me, in the past few weeks when we're not recording. Star Alliance is actually considering onboarding all their budget, aka low-cost brothers and sisters within Star. So let's say Singapore has Scoot. Scoot now would be actually part of Star Alliance. It makes sense, right?
It does make sense. It does make sense because then for people like us, that opens up redemption and reward opportunities and connections and all of that stuff. It makes sense. I'm actually surprised it took this long for them to do it.
Yeah, exactly. Because, for instance, I don't think we can qualify Cathay Dragon as a budget, or would you?
No. In fact, there was a fascinating article in the South China Morning Post recently about Cathay's decision to make sure that it never became a low-cost carrier came out of the conversation between John Schlosser, who's the chairman of Cathay, and the former CEO of United Airlines, who oversaw TED, and said, "I really wish we hadn't done that."
Oh, wow. Interesting.
And that kind of, yeah, so I'll post a link because it was a good read.
Okay, well, I had no idea. Because that was my line of thought. I mean, sometimes it feels that this, the line with what is budget, low cost, non-budget is really thin because a lot of the airlines have, I mean, clearly sometimes it's clear when you have Air France doing Transavia, they've decided since the beginning it's a low cost or budget because they prefer the term budget carrier. Some of the other, like, Cathay Dragon, like I learned now, never felt as a budget airline, but it's still the most cost effective airline than the main one. Meaning the differentiation within an alliance for customers, for passengers like us, and like, okay, so you're part of the same group. Vueling is part of IAG, but you wouldn't be part of the frequent flyer program. Why is that? It doesn't make sense. I think, by the way, Vueling, you actually get accrued miles if you fly them. I'm not sure.
I've never flown on them.
Because I think that sometimes when you want to fly to some destinations in Europe and you're on BA's websites or Iberia websites, you get actually booked on Vueling. So I would only assume that if you do that, they kind of just then announce that, oh, by the way, you've bought a BA ticket, but since it's Vueling metal, you don't have any miles. I don't think that would actually work.
Which is infuriating.
So, I mean,
especially when you discover after the fact.
Yeah. I believe that Star Alliance here, they're just being realistic about the fact that more and more of the world will be, especially for short to medium haul, will be about using budget, low-cost carriers. I mean, of course, you'll be also using a long-haul low-cost, but if they want to compete, they need to have this ability to be flexible into, Alex sometimes wants to have the plush experience of a Cathay First, and then needs to have also the cheap cost of like a 45 minutes within Southeast Asia.
Exactly.
Right?
That's exactly the type of scenario where I would use it.
Yeah, and also interlining agreements, etc., etc. Since we're on Star, let's talk about United. Why is it that every time we need to talk about United, there's something negative? I don't know. They're looking for it. They're replacing their old bonus structure.
Oh my God, yeah.
With a lottery. How is that even a thing?
It was so bad that obviously and rightfully, people flipped out and there were protests and they were universally mocked that they've climbed down massively from this. They're not going to do it anymore, but that they even suggested that this was a good idea and that people would be okay with it is so tone deaf. It's not even fun. And then I would be saying this if it was about United or about some not airline company, because it's just dumb.
They retracted and said, we're pressing the pause button on this idea. The thing, I'm guessing when you do cost cutting, which all the airlines want to do, including Garuda, by the way, they're all trying to be more efficient in the very competitive world. They must have said, okay, maybe it's more cost effective to just say we're randomly going to attribute bonuses to people as a lottery than to actually have an entire system where we have to review employees. You have these 360 reviews between the boss and the employee, et cetera, et cetera. So let's remove all this and just have a system where we just attribute money for, which makes sense on a pure Excel spreadsheet level, but doesn't make sense at a human level at all, because why would I be a good employee if I have no correlation between my job and whatever salary I'm getting? I mean,
yeah. Well, exactly.
We should do a layovers lottery. So we're only two. So one of us gets the bonus at the end of the year. I mean, we don't make any money, guys, out of it.
Yeah, exactly.
So I was about to go to Qatar, but before I do that, tell us about your Emirates experience.
It was very, very good. I flew just London to Dubai and back, and it was much better than my last business class experience, which I think I shared on this show, which was a red eye with odd service and a strangely uncomfortable seat. This was not the case here. This was consistent. It was very, very good. I had a very early morning flight, so I think my chauffeur picked me up at my house in rural England at about maybe 5:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
Which is fine.
So you were taking the 9 a.m. service, right?
The 9 a.m. service, that's right. Yeah. I did a little video of this for Attaché.
Yeah, I was about to say, it's really nice. People should actually watch it.
Not one of our nice ones that Greg does, but just something to be along for the ride. The service was exemplary. And I don't know if you noticed this, but they don't give you an amenity kit on many routes and many services on Emirates anymore in business class.
No, so so it's been a while already because I've asked the question because they used to at the beginning give you always, and it's true that they don't do it anymore on daytime flights,
which I suppose is fine. But I wanted one, and I asked, and the flight attendant kind of looked around surreptitiously and said, "Hang on a minute." And she went back, and I guess they have a secret stash somewhere. And she came back and sort of slipped it to me while making a comment about something completely other and said, just don't tell anybody. Whether it was an act or real or not, I don't know. It doesn't matter. It was just a really nice gesture.
Sorry, I will interrupt you there because I had this thought when I was flying recently Garuda, and they are very also nice amenity kits. Do you think, I mean, besides us liking having one, and I especially love the pouches actually more than anything, because sometimes I actually use the pouches for other purposes later, for my cables, for instance. But
yeah, they're great.
But do you think it's really always necessary? Because I've seen, for instance, like Emirates, when you go into lavatory, they have a stash of, toothpaste and combs and razors.
All that.
I mean, besides the fact that it's a nice experience to get one of these, but what do you think with the number of people that just open it and just don't do anything with them?
No, I think it's fine. I just, I forgot that they didn't have one. That really doesn't bother me at all. What does bother me is when it is a red eye and there's no earplugs or eye mask. That's the only thing I really care about. Some airlines have attempted to remove that and then met with rage.
Contempt.
Which they should. Frankly, it's dumb not to provide those things, but there we are.
I mean, just in general, I've come to realize that many times there's many things that I just wouldn't use. Is it a bit, not really environmentally friendly? I mean, I like them, but I'm perfectly fine to have most of the items that would be within these amenity kits at my disposal in a lavatory or simply on demand, like the earplugs, for instance. I don't use earplugs because I always have noise cancelling headphones on me, even if I sleep. I know people say, yeah, you cannot sleep on the side. No, it's not true. I can. I got used to it, maybe. But I understand that needs to be on the plane, but I'm not always sure it actually needs to be in an amenity kit.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
So go on. So was it so?
No. I mean, of course, the Heathrow lounge. It's excellent. It's light, airy, got great views of the runway. You board from the lounge, which is just a joy, makes life a lot easier. It was a very new A380 on the way there and not as new on the way back. And the only reason I can tell is just the wear and tear, but also we had the touch close double window shades.
Yeah.
On the way over there. And then just the flip up and down manual ones, which I actually prefer.
Yeah, me too.
They can't lock them.
Me too.
So, but again, a great experience. The food was fantastic, as it always is. What was interesting about the food is that they had a partner dish from Qantas. So you have thematic...
The sandwich.
The sandwich, yeah. It was a... hang on, I'll tell you exactly what it was. I've got the menu right here because I'm that much of a dork. It was a...
I had that. I tried it actually 2 years ago. I'm not sure it's always there. I know it's always there.
I've lost it now. But it was a pork cutlet with Emmental cheese, and it was fantastic. It was really, really good. Because I asked the cabin crew when she was taking orders, what do you recommend? And she's like, to be honest with you, we all flipping love this sandwich. And so I got it, and it was very, very good. But yeah, I mean, Emirates business class is so good. The lounge is great. Although I did see somebody get into a huge altercation in the lounge.
What?
Because they were stupid enough to pick up a hot bagel. and they went full, let me speak to the manager. And this went on for like 90 minutes.
I'm like, come on, really?
And I almost wanted to say to the poor crew that were dealing with this guy, he's the dumbass. He picked up a hot bagel and is now blaming you for it because he's too dumb to realize that hot things are hot.
My God. People are so, my God.
Yeah, it's frustrating.
No, this is,
But
you don't want
yeah.
to intervene because you're a sane human being.
You don't want any trouble.
But yeah, but at the same time, sometimes you want to say, hey guys, have some common sense. You know, it was hot, like you just said. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's, chicken schnitzel and Swiss cheese sandwich. Looked horrendous. It tasted delicious. I had the traditional mezza to start with. I'm a big fan of Emirates.
I'm going to fly them in 2 weeks, I think. So I'm gonna be trying to have that. Were you flying both ways the 380?
Yes.
I'm asking that because, and I've not looked into it. So guys, if you have more information or could simply Google it, which I haven't done before we started recording this show because it was very last minute. Interestingly, so Emirates had announced, I don't know if it was an announcement or just hinted at it, back 2 years ago that all their flights, Gatwick and Heathrow, would be 380 only. When I was looking for that flight that I'm doing in 2 weeks, there were routes coming back to Heathrow, interestingly, that were 777s.
I wonder if this is something to do with Stansted coming online.
Yeah, maybe.
And capacity availability, but you're right, because the 380 for me is the selling point.
Yeah, me too. There's a flight that I might have to do with Emirates as well, which is to Kuala Lumpur. Most of their flights there are 777. There's only very few 380s routes there. I mean, during the day, I think there's one. All the others are 777s. I'm fine with the 777 in terms of the seats. It's you don't have all aisle access. Some of the older, and that's the thing, because you mentioned having an older 380. At least with a 380, because it's only 10 years old, the oldest one maybe from Emirates. Although they've iterated the product, it always is very consistent. On a 777, it's always staggered, always like 232, and so you have. But the oldest 777s, it's angled lie flat. It's not lie flat, if I remember correctly, meaning that you don't know where you're going to get for the same price you would have at another aircraft when you are onboarding a 777. I'm pretty sure that if you do 777 to London, because it's one of their high yield route, they will put some of the newer ones, Kuala Lumpur, or I remember when I flew Kochi in India, etc. They will sometimes have older ones, and then for the seemingly the same price, you have an older product. I know we're a geek when we say that, but we cannot know in advance which one they will put, which is a bit frustrating sometimes.
It is, and I should qualify my A380 777. I love the 777 as a plane. It's
me too.
Exactly what you were just talking about. It's the product.
Yeah, it's the product
for Emirates specifically.
Although, and I think we mentioned that many times when we talk about Emirates, you and me, I have a preference for the 777 in terms of service because it's smaller. It seems that the crew somehow is less industrial with you. I know I've used that term already. The sheer size of that upper floor means that sometimes service has to be not quick because they're not like rushing, but it's, repetitive because they have like so many passengers who do the same thing. On the 777, sometimes I find it a little bit more personal. And I'm not blaming here the crew. I'm just saying simply because of the size of the aircraft, there's no other way to do it correctly.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But again, I did find the service exemplary.
Yeah.
And the speed with which they got meals out, and that's one thing that does frustrate me a little bit about BA is it does take a long time to get the meal. But even when I boarded in Dubai, it was another morning flight, 9 a.m. They said, we're not going to serve lunch until about an hour and a half after we take off. So if you want something, you should, I'm happy to get it for you. But I appreciated knowing that because then I could plan things a bit better.
Anything else you want to add about that flight?
No, I just love it. I love that airport. I love that place. I went to my favorite place in Bergman for some food. So yeah, it was brief. But interestingly, I barely left the airport because I stayed and spoke in a hotel that was connected to the airport.
No way.
So I had to sort of make a conscious effort to say, I'm going to leave now and I'm going to jump in an Uber and go out into Dubai. Otherwise, I could have literally just stayed at the airport for my entire time.
Oh.
They really didn't want to do.
So you didn't use the chauffeur service in Dubai?
I did because they wanted me to. I really could have walked, although I think it would have been pretty unpleasant because the roads around. Maybe that's why they didn't let me, actually, because there's so much construction going on around the airport that perhaps the route would not have been an option. I bet you that's why they did it, actually.
Did you try upgrading yourself?
There was no availability. Otherwise, I would have used some miles to go back and have a shower.
The load factors are so high. We should live in a smaller city or something because sometimes it's just very frustrating. Since we are at the MA2, let's talk briefly about Qatar, because Qatar settled an agreement with the US on this big battle that was our epic discussion since the very early shows. It was almost defining our show for a little while. Potentially, is it because Qatar has so much predicaments now? They have this blockade that's still happening. So, they have limited airspace to fly out of their own country. They cannot go to Dubai, which is really actually super frustrating because I wish I could still sometimes use Qatar to go to Dubai. So they settled an agreement with the US. Part of the agreement is that Qatar Airways will issue audited financial reports within a year, and within 2 years, it must disclose any transaction with state-owned enterprises. So basically what they are asking here, what the US is telling is like, okay, if you do anything that appears to be some kind of subsidy, because, they're very closely related to the state, you should let us know, and we will make a decision. The deal, I don't think it mentions any route limitations, etc., but we know that Qatar hasn't expanded to the US. Do you think it's just because they're in this more feeble position and they had to find a way to stabilize their relationship? Or do you think
the cynic in me says that this is something that is inconsequential, but is aimed to give a moral victory to the US without actually doing anything. It cannot be hard to obfuscate the source of those funding, to some weird offshore company. Again, that's the cynic in me. I don't think it's going to be any change whatsoever.
No, actually, it's more like a symbolic win. It's not either a blueprint for the two others, Etihad and Emirates. One of the article in the agreement says that Qatar Airways is not allowed to do any Fifth Freedom routes to the US. The thing is,
that's frustrating.
But they never planned to do any, at least officially and publicly. Here, I think it's a signal to the others, telling, especially Emirates, obviously, they fly from Athens, from Milan, to tell them, look, this is what we agree with them. If you want to play ball with us, this is what you should. So it's a signal so Emirates stop doing this Fifth Freedom route, which I don't think they will stop doing. But I mean, this is a bit of the bargaining game here. I don't think it leads to any different position for Qatar Airways itself.
No, me neither. You wonder what the hell the point was in the first place. How much did this cost?
God, I don't know. Well, but since we're on that, talking about another tariff battle, the one with Bombardier, which is kind of settled. It looks like, contrary to what we said in a previous episode, that Boeing will create a venture with Embraer. It will be a separate venture that the actual Embraer, because the government in Brazil said, no way, you're not buying Embraer because it's too tightly linked with our defense industry. So they will create a new company with only commercial aircraft, of which Boeing will held 51%. So exactly what you didn't want to happen is happening.
Yeah, it's disappointing, isn't it? I hope that they leave it. I hope they continue it because they're actively selling the E2 jets at the moment. They're going around the world and pitching to people, especially JetBlue. Actually, you know what? There was an incredible quote from Jason Rabinowitz, who's at Airline Flyer on Twitter, who's a really interesting guy, that this was the E190E2. On a simulator test, quote, we pulled the nose up to 30 degrees, pitched and rolled the aircraft onto its back. Without our intervention, the aircraft pitched down, rolled out of the inverted altitude, and smoothly recovered from the overspeed during the steep descent. All by itself.
Wow.
That's just incredible to me. This is a great airplane. So I want them to continue. I want them to, because they're innovators, and I appreciate it. And they make great airplanes.
They absolutely do. Wow.
Isn't that amazing?
As we said, I mean, there's always a possibility that simply, Embraer will keep up doing the same aircraft as Bombardier is supposed to do with Airbus, and simply use Boeing's or Airbus for Bombardier's, customer relationship, network, spare part, etc. So it could be, and let's hope so, that
Yeah.
Embraer keeps its own personality, just has a better chances fighting all over the world.
Could have been a defensive purchase to make sure that no one else got them as well, which, again, is a little frustrating.
Be a proxy battle. I mean, this is what we're seeing. Actually.
Very true.
Okay, let's go to my Garuda flight.
Yes.
So Garuda, I told you the story of the airline. So I was looking into, because of the great promo fares, I wanted to do this extra long flights. So I'm booking it. That's the one thing that still doesn't work very well, Garuda people. The website is still off and on. Actually, it would fail many times simply trying to find me the route. I would actually put the thing and it would just say, sorry, due to technical difficulties, we cannot calculate the price of that route. I'm like, I'm just going to freaking Jakarta. I don't know if there are teething problems, but it's really not great. So I ended up buying the fare on Opodo, which is one of the OTAs that exists. It's actually a pretty good, as far as, these third-party OTAs that we rarely speak about. They have a pretty good experience both on the website and on their mobile app. It's really well done. You can do a pretty good research. So it worked pretty well. They have one thing that I really didn't appreciate, but I got around it at the end, is that I was buying a business class flight. Then they say, oh, do you want to add seats? And I'm like, yeah, I want to add seats. Oh, here's you have to pay more. Where actually it's free to do it on Garuda's. So it's just a mean for people that are a bit less, bit clueless to actually, being ripped. Yeah, I didn't really like that, to be honest with you, at Opodo, because, I'm like, if I were to fly maybe economy in some airlines that, only allow to have seats booked 7 days in advance, etc. Yeah, fine. I would pay. It was not expensive, but this was like, guys, I know I'm not supposed to pay for a normal seat. Why are you asking me to pay? So I paid. Then I called them and they removed the thing.
That's good.
Yeah.
Still.
When I was looking to find where would be the best seat to fly from London to Jakarta, I was going on, our usual flyer talks, etc., and all these reviews. There's not that many reviews about Garuda yet because, again, it's an airline that is really starting to regrow. So there's not a lot of flight reports, but I was trying to see what could be the best seat, because we're geeks and we're looking at things like that. The seats are exactly the same on business class that the ones you can find on Iberia, the 340, if I'm not mistaken, or 330. 121 staggered seat. So it's always best to have the seat on the window because you have more privacy. The one that are not on the windows, but still on that aisle, of course, you're completely open to the aisle. We know the drill. Most of the airlines are like that. I was looking at that and I found somebody mentioning that he was able to upgrade to first class for $150. And I'm like, what?
What? That doesn't sound right.
Exactly. I was like, no, that can't be. That can't be. I tried to go online, but because I didn't buy my ticket on Garuda's, I'm not able to participate in the system of, I'm not sure if it's true bidding, but I couldn't get access to that system because I had bought for a third party. But another person said on another thread, he was able to do that at the airport. And he mentioned something very important. I was only able to do it 4 hours before the flight. Oof. 4 hours. So my flight, thank God, was at 9-something p.m. So I said, you know what? Because I want to try, I'm going to go way early. I mean, you and me go very early at airports anyway. So I said, yeah, I'm gonna try go a bit earlier and try my luck. Of course, lots of traffic on the M25. End up arriving with 2 minutes to spare before 4 hours. I'm like, my God, why am I so early? I'm not going to be able to make it. I go there, Terminal 3 at Heathrow, so the one that is a bit now old and tired. Exactly. Yeah. Thank you. That's the word. Which is strange, by the way, because Garuda is SkyTeam, and SkyTeam at Heathrow is Old Terminal 4. I'll come to that in a minute. So I found it on the very right-hand side where actually a Middle Eastern airline is as well. It feels like, these airlines that didn't have enough money to have a premium spot in the airport. I'm sorry, Middle Eastern Airlines. I'm nothing.
No, true.
I'm stressed out. I have a minute before I reach that 4-hour point. I'm like, I need to do something now. I cannot find ticketing, but I see the first class check-in counter. By the way, there are already people waiting both on the economy and the business line for check-in. I'm like, wow, are you supposed to be that early? I enter the first class counter. There's a nice carpentry and etc. That really stands out. There's two people. Say, hi, can I help you? Yeah, I would like to inquire for a first class upgrade. And, in my head, I'm like, this is never going to happen. They're going to ask me for £1,000 to upgrade, especially because, again, I was in a very seemingly low fare. I had paid the entire flight from London to Seoul and back was £1,200,
Amazing.
which is nothing. So for me,
Yeah,
I'm
you
like,
can't even get to Dubai for that.
exactly, which tells me I'm in a super promo fare. Either they're going to tell me upgrade is impossible, or they're going to tell me that upgrade is like half of my kidney or something. It turns out to be like, I think it was 300. And I'm like, okay, the client already paid the flight, so it's just 300 for me. For 14 hours, I'm never going to get another chance to fly freaking first class for 300 because my cost to me is only 300.
Yeah.
That's where science fiction began. I haven't paid. He's already emitting me my boarding passes for first class. He's apologizing, saying, I'm very sorry, I cannot upgrade you for the second leg being from Jakarta to Seoul because there's no such thing as a first class. And I'm like, no, but I really want only the first class for that long-ass flight. Which
Yeah.
I'm handing my credit card ticketing, and the person next to me, which was the person who had dealt with my request at a first class counter, suddenly becomes a butler.
It
takes
pretty amazing.
I don't realize it first. It takes my carry-on, and I interject like, I'm not going to check that in. I'm going to keep it with me. He said, no, sir, don't worry. I'm going to help you with that. And I'm like, why is he going to help me with my carry-on? I don't need help. It's not like. And as soon as I get the receipt for my credit card invoice, he says, yeah, please follow me. Okay. And actually, he goes with me at security, the fast track security, through security with me. He walks me all the way through the number one lounge. They don't have their own lounge at Heathrow, so they're using number one, which is one of these third-party lounges. There's a room, an entire room, closed off, only for me. Then he introduces me to my person that's going to take care of me while I wait for the flight, asks me, so what time do you want me to be boarding? Look at him and say, I don't know. What time should we board? I have no idea. And he says, usually we board first class passengers last, 30 minutes before the flight. I look at him and say, you know what? I will have waited for almost 3 hours in the lounge. Could I have an early boarding? He says, no problem, sir, of course. As soon as the cleaning is done, there's only a 2 hours, I think, turnaround between the flight coming from Jakarta and leaving. As soon as it's done, I'm going to pick you up. He hands me his business card. In my head, I'm like, he's handing his business card because he wants me to maybe put a good word of the good service. And he's, here's my cell. You can call me anytime if you need anything. I'm like, what? I'm in the lounge. Why would I need you to? He's even asked me, do you want me to accompany you to do some shopping? It's science fiction.
That's incredible.
All the while, the other person who was taking care, I think she was a number one employee, so the lounge employee. She comes with a menu. Usually at number one, you have to pay for stuff. There's a lot of stuff that is not free. Here, of course, everything is free. They have their own menu for first-class passengers. I could order, I don't have it in front of me, guys, but so many things I could order, of course, champagne and everything. I mean, it was incredible. So the guy, I'm going to just say his name. I don't think he was Indonesian because his first name was Sandesh. I think he must have been probably Pakistani, but I wouldn't be absolutely sure. Very nice gentleman. What I really loved about the experience, because to be honest with you, Alex, this experience of having a butler, especially with people like you and me, we used to do stuff at our own pace.
Yeah, it's almost,
it's awkward.
It's appreciated, but not necessarily.
You're like, why? Especially at security, I'm like, I need to, I'm going to hurry even faster than I usually do because this guy is, he doesn't have a carry-on, so he's super fast through, and I'm still putting my belt back, and I'm so sorry, I'll do quick. He's like, no worries, sir. But it's weird, right? It's as if maybe I would have liked to, I don't know, just get a bit of fresh air before going through security or doing some, go to a convenience store. I didn't request it because I wanted to see what it was, but it's almost awkward. The thing that was brilliant though, and absolutely brilliant, is that this person, and that was the case for all the other people I've met throughout this journey about Garuda, loved the airline so much. He was telling me about when they bought the 777s. For geeks like us, it was amazing. Also, not only when they bought the 777s, that specific 777, exactly how old it was, how my experience will be inside, what kind of food I could... I was asking him questions, At some point I said jokingly, that on the way back, until very recently, because the airport at Jakarta, the runway was not long enough. I'm not kidding.
That's funny.
They couldn't take off fully loaded with a 777 and have enough fuel to do London. So they would do Jakarta, Singapore, do a refuel at Singapore, and then fly to London. And this has stopped a few months ago because now I think they just expanded the runway. And I was asking him about that. It was very open. Yeah, we had this, but it's no longer the case. And then he was telling me, we have first class services now with 777s. Our two main routes are Narita and London. Your flight actually does London, Jakarta, Jakarta, Bali, Bali, Narita. I'm like, oh, wow, this is something I should do one day, actually, because it's, it's perfect.
Lots of great places there.
Yeah, you go to Bali first, and then you go to our beloved Tokyo. Come on, Alex, this is just perfect.
Yeah, no brainer.
But
no brainer.
But amazing how much the person knew about the airline. He loved the airline. Like it was not fake. You know, it was not like a script that it was, because again, I was asking a question about the airline, about the logo, about, you know, he was able to answer everything. He felt he truly loved his job. He truly loved it. That's something that it's quite extraordinary in any line of work when you see someone being so enthusiastic about his own job and his own workplace. It's amazing. Honestly, it's something incredible. Anyway, he comes picking me up. That's the other strange thing. Alex, you know, we like to be early at the gate as well, right? There, you have to wait for this guy to pick you up. You become oblivious of the actual time because you don't check. But it's also a bit upsetting because, like, right now I would actually like to go to the gate, but he's not here to pick me up. But actually, when he picked me up, I was literally the first one to board. So he really made good on his promise to pick me up early before everybody else. If I had been to the gate, I would have just sat there waiting for the plane to be ready. So actually, it was, you know, what I wanted. But it's strange because we like to be in control. We're so used to it. Again, he takes my carry-on. You know, I tell him it's not necessary. He says, no, sir, it's part of our first-class service. I'm like, oh, my God, okay. Anyway, we walk. I remember it was gate 31. The gates at Terminal 3 Heathrow, for you guys who have been there, are not the best. You know, they're like these kind of enclosed, very low ceiling gates. Not really, really nice, right? You know, there are these people movers. And I'm like, we're overshooting the gate. We should have stopped here and just walked. No. Because we have a private access to the gate.
No way.
The guy swipes his card, opens the door. The door, I'm not even entering the gate. I'm entering directly into the jet bridge. And I go into the jet bridge, and basically he hands me over to the head cabin in the first class. And he told me, because he saw I was curious, I was like, okay, so up till when are you supposed to do that? And he says, yeah, well, our job is to never leave you alone. Which, oh my God. And yeah, he handed me over, presented me the person. And, you know, whilst we were walking the jet bridge, he says, I don't remember her name. I'm really bad. I should have written her the name down. He says, oh, and that will be her today. And she's my favorite. You'll see she's a wonderful person. And yes, she was a wonderful person. She probably is. You know, I think you said that many times, Alex, you know, these, the type we found of Cathay Pacific, you know, really super experienced head of cabins that seemingly know what you want before you actually want it.
Yeah, they're a rare breed.
That's that level, which is surprising because you'd say surprising. I'm not sure it's the right word, but you say Garuda, this quantum leap with Ziggy is only less than 10 years. It's 5-6 years, but this person seemingly has had experience for 30 years. Was she from another airline before, or was she simply super well trained?
Very possibly, yeah.
Because she was Indonesian, clearly, so maybe she had been working for somebody else, but impeccable. That's, of course, it's a first class, guys, I get it, but that's a 5-star airline. And then science fiction continues because I'm sitting. So the seat is very reminiscent, because now you've done it, Alex, to what you see in, very reminiscent is an overstatement, to what you see in Emirates. So they have doors as well. They're not electrical, so you have to do manually, like on Asiana. Very, very, very large seat that transforms into a bed, very large screen, not as large as the latest screens on first class in Emirates, but still really fantastic quality. I'm sitting, and this other, the flight attendant comes to me. She was adorable. I cannot remember her name either. I wish, because I would really have wanted to say something to the airline. She brings me slippers, but we're not talking about slippers like you find in all the airlines I've flown until now in my life.
Yeah.
And I've not done all the first class possible. We're talking about really like, these like you have at home with a very large soul, very deep soul. It's just something that, I don't know, like that I would buy for at least 100 quid in a shop. Like,
wow.
Like something completely. And, she's like they do in Asian airlines. She's almost on her knees. They're very bent down. She puts a piece of cloth, red, in front of my feet because, the cabin is so large. And she puts the slippers there. And, I'm like, what am I supposed to do now? So I'm like, okay, I'm going to remove my shoes, right? And I put the slippers because basically I think she's expecting me to put my slippers so then she can remove that piece of cloth that she put like to delicately offer me slippers.
Yeah.
All the time she's talking to me about the food we'll be having, that she'll be introducing me to the chef later on. I'm like, oh my God, this is our chef. And
Chef.
I remove my boots and there's on the side, there's another, and this time it's not a piece of cloth, but it's a piece of leather, which is solid. And then she removes the red piece of cloth and she leaves with my shoes like a waiter would do. And she goes away with my shoes. So they are basically taking your shoes and putting in safe storage for the duration of the flight. I'm like, what is that? Anyway, then I get introduced to the chef, super cool guy. Everybody was Indonesian. I think it's one of the best experiences in terms, along the Emirates, along Asiana was probably a slightly just below because the teams were not as warm. There was a very warm rapport, and that makes it something quite incredible. Which I've never done Cathay Pacific first. I've never done Singapore first. I've done Etihad first, and I had a great rapport. I had done Emirates first. I had a great rapport. Asiana, it was amazing, but it was a bit more cold. Maybe it's just cultural, right?
Yeah,
that was incredible. The food, Alex. I mean, we'll talk about it in another episode because I could dedicate an entire episode. You love Indonesian food. I had everything I wanted and more.
Love it.
The only thing I would say here is that it's like in Emirates First Class, they put the menus into these leather books, which is great, but it sucks because I couldn't take them with me. I want you're like, I want to keep the menu, but you don't want to steal the thing with the leathers.
Well, when I had that with Emirates, I said, can I get a copy of the menu? And she's like, I'll take it out and you just take this. I wanted the same thing.
I should have asked. Probably I could have done it, actually. The champagne was absolutely out of this world. I don't have it, the name in front of me. I think it's, but it's one of the best champagne I've ever had. I'm a sucker for champagne. I love champagne. It's really not what you should have in flight, as in it gives you a headache. There was obviously, since you also had that thing with Emirates, there was caviar as well. The table, the tray, I've sent you a picture, remember? The tray was I don't know, it's the size of a table from the Middle Ages, right? The weight of that thing, it must be at least 30 kilos.
It looked like an Indonesian hardwood.
It is! It actually is!
That's incredible.
You have to press a button mechanism to put it out, and it's huge! Absolutely huge! Great thing, there were air vents. Love it. Do that, please, other airlines. Fantastic experience, 14 hours. The IFE, great content, but of course not as complete as Emirates. But I had so many things. I hadn't flown for 2 months, man. There's so many things I could watch. The UI was maybe not as spectacular as some of the others, like Turkish, etc. But it worked. The one funny bit was you could actually personalize the UI. You can say the colors and the font. I'm like, what? That's the first menu you get. You get it and say, choose your wallpaper. I'm like, why do I want to choose a wallpaper?
Yeah.
Just
want to get to the content.
No, everything was super well done. There's one thing on the IFE I really appreciate, the way they display the time remaining to your flight. No matter what you look, you can just press a quick button and you have a drop down shading on the up of the screen that tells you what time it is in London, what it is in Jakarta, how long it remains to the flight. Really, really well done. You always know where you are. They had internet, guys. In Europe, we still don't have internet, for crying out loud. The head of cabin gave me this voucher, so it's a scratch card. The Wi-Fi was super fast all throughout.
That's amazing.
And Europe really at the Bermuda Triangle of Wi-Fi. There's nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's coming. We'll probably talk about it in the next episode because it's already a long episode, this one. But I think it was the Germans, Deutsche Telekom, what's the name?
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, they do. And it's, I think otherwise the full flight, because I did that on the way back in business class, the full flight would be, I think, $20, which for a 14-hour flight is actually...
That's not bad at all.
Yeah, really, right? It's really not bad. So you would have died for the food. You could, of course, choose about modern international or you could Indonesian, and there were cheese, dessert. I mean, I was not able to eat it all because I would have exploded. There was it was obviously one of the best flights I've done, but I would say mostly because of the people.
It really makes a difference, doesn't it? And I think what you've described, and will continue to describe because you've only done one leg, and I know there's more little secrets here and Easter eggs, but it's the connected experience, isn't it?
Yeah.
From ground to air to food and then through and transitions. And I think that's where a lot of airlines who rely on fancy interior products get tripped up or don't pay attention.
That seamlessness was absolutely fantastic. It was something that, of course, like we said earlier, you and me would probably prefer to do it on our own and not have a person that walks through security with us because or goes shopping with us. But really, you know what? I felt, and I'll come to the rest in a minute, I felt I didn't have to think about anything because I knew that as soon as, for instance, we landed, what happened, somebody will pick me up, which happened, will take me to the lounge, which happened. You forget about what time do I board, what is the gate, where I'm supposed to go. You just follow people. Do I want to have that in every flight? No, because I like to be in control. I like to have, we have our habits, and it's maybe overkill for people like us. Maybe for a certain segment of their customers is perfect, but for me it's too much. But in terms of seamlessness, you're absolutely right. It's stunning. You feel you're in the product all throughout. And remember, they are in Terminal 3, so not the terminal that they wish to be in. They don't have their own lounge. They can achieve something very close to a full brand experience without having their own product all throughout. That's pretty impressive, actually.
It is impressive, and it's very rare as well.
Yeah. I was asking Sandesh when I was walking with him through security and all these things. I had to find topics and conversations. I said, so don't you are at Terminal 4? And then first thing he says, smart man, he says, yeah, Middle Eastern is here. So I'm like, yeah, you're right. Okay, fine. And apparently they are wanting to go there. That's kind of the long-term plan to regroup. The thing is, we know Heathrow is full. So they have to wait for someone at Terminal 4 to leave or for Terminal 4 to be expanded, or because it's a whole slot problem. They cannot just decide to go there. So they are clearly waiting. And I think that's the reason they're not building their own lounge at Terminal 3, because I believe what they want in the long term or midterm is to be at Terminal 4 like everybody else and have this complete experience with their own lounge.
Which makes sense.
So remember, I said at the very beginning, I said, okay, I just want to get upgraded for that flight. And Sandesh told me something as he was handing me over to the head of cabin first class in the flight. He was telling me, I'll make sure to let our people know in Jakarta that they keep on treating you as first class, although there's no first class in the second leg. Because, for instance, when you fly Emirates and you upgrade yourself, let's say you do London, Dubai, Tokyo, and because you have points, Alex, you say, I want to sleep in the first flight, I'm going to upgrade myself, and I do first to Dubai, and then in Dubai you do business. You're not allowed in the first class lounge because that's your second leg that matters. No, here, somebody waited for me. She wants to take this time I resist. I said, no, come on, I'll just deal with my carry on. Really, it's super light. Don't worry about it. So she walks me through transit, transfer security. We go to the lounge, and I have my own room again.
Wow.
There, you can see the airport, which I'll come at the end, is that's a new terminal called Terminal 3. Actually, they call it Terminal 3U, U for Ultimate. Zurich at some point used to be called Zurich Unique Airport. That's this bit of the overblown statements. I don't think it's really good to use these kind of statements, but it's really new. It's really nice. But I felt that I was in this VIP room, and the lounge is very reminiscent to what, again, we see at Emirates. So the upper floor, it can overlook all the gates. But I'm like, this is a nice lounge, really.
Yeah.
But this is not. This is where the experience kind of seemingly broke a little bit.
That's interesting.
On the way back, because now I understand, on the way back, when I was only business class, I realized there is ready a first class lounge, but it's not open. It's right there. It was lit up, etc., but it's not open. So what they did, they put me in a private room in the business class lounge, which again is totally great, right? I'm not really, but that room was clearly a room that was usually made for instance, people with disabilities or people with there was no electrical plugs. The decor, it was not, which again, really, guys, I'm not complaining. I'm saying I should have simply gotten through a normal seat in the lounge. That would have been better than being in this room. Of course, I enjoyed it on my own, but it was not necessary again. The person there, Kaya, what she was called, was also amazing. I mean, she... every time I was stepping out of the room, said, "Do you need something, sir?" I'm like, "Oh, no, I just want to take a walk. I have 2 hours, 4 hours before my flight."
It does get a little tiring after a while, but
she was much younger than us. And I think she got it. I told her, I just want to walk around the terminal. I've never seen it. I have 2 hours more. I'm going to be bored. She smiled at she was able to read me that I didn't need like a chaperone all throughout. Then she goes with me to the gate for the flight to Seoul. And that's something I was not expected. I was still considered a first class passenger, although there's no first class in the second flight. So she was still doing the service. Not only that, because I also had told her I would love to enter the flight early. We entered the gate, the jet bridge, whilst another flight was still being boarded. A jet bridge and 2 gates, and 2...
Oh, I see. Wow.
So I was like, in terms of security, it was a bit strange. I'm like, okay, so I'm walking down with other people that are going to another flight, but just because I wanted to go early, she opened me the flight for me, and I was the first one to sit in business class. That was a 300. That's much older. 2 cabins, a big at the front and a small in the middle for business class. The small in the middle has 12 seats. I was alone. I sent you the picture. That was super amazing.
Yeah.
We're talking a 7-hour flight. These are like angled live fly seats.
Yeah, no, anyway, angled recline kind of.
Yeah, so it's
not lie flat.
Yeah, not fully flat, but angled. It's okay. I had already slept in the previous flight. Was a great flight as well. You can feel here that the crews are less used to international customers. The food was. There was one thing I've taken on that flight, an Indonesian food. That was, I think, the best I've ever eaten in my life in a plane ever.
Wow.
One day when we do food, we'll talk about that. So amazing experience as well. Of course, if I had only to fly these type of aircrafts, clearly then the product suffers in comparison to more modern business class. And I landed in Seoul, in Incheon. And there's another guy actually waiting for me and picking me up. And then I'm like, this is not happening. And this was admittedly useless because since Incheon is very well laid out and very easy to navigate and very quick to basically clear, there was really no purpose of him because he walked me until immigration, which was literally a minute away from the exit gate. And then he says, "I'm going to wait for you on the other side." Okay, so I clear immigration. He's waiting for me. We walk through the luggage belts, and then we exit, and that was it. I was like, the purpose of him... I mean, then he says, do you have a driver waiting for you? I'm like, no, I don't have a driver waiting for me.
Right.
But meaning that was a bit useless to have someone... Again, but I understand. If you have the full service, first-class service from an airline, you want to have this, like you correctly said, all throughout.
Yeah.
But it was... That bit, I was like, I almost wanted to tell him, don't worry, I don't need to. I know exactly where immigration is. And look, this is just like the 1% flies or something. I don't know.
Pretty amazing, though. That's just incredible.
So I can understand why they're 5-star. There are some things that still, don't work. We'll do the airport in a minute. So a few things that don't work. But for most of it, you can feel where they're going with it. And that is clearly becoming a 5-star airline. But to our earlier point, is it better than Emirates? Probably not. It actually reminds me, this mix of trying to be very good and having very good fares reminds me of Emirates when I started flying them in 2009-10, where they were younger. They were already kind of big, Emirates, at that time, but not as big as they are now. And they were really trying to show themselves to the world. And I was very reminiscent of that. I'm not saying that they are trying the same model as Emirates, because clearly not. They're simply because of location. They don't have that very central world location. But, well, there was this kind of feeling that they were really trying to show their best face, and it was not forced. It was really, really well done. And a very quick comment: on the way back, I did everything in business class because, of course, when I had a stopover this time in Jakarta, I stayed in Jakarta for 18 hours. My mistake, maybe a trick for you guys if you ever want to do something like that, I should have asked for the first class upgrade, because, of course, I want to try my luck a second time. I should have asked it in Seoul, because that was the start of my journey, even though it was 18 hours, because it considered 18 hours as a stopover. I would have probably gotten a deal, because when I asked in Jakarta, they told me you're less than 4 hours. And then they said, okay, but we can try. This is going to be almost 2,000 pounds. I'm like, yeah, right. No, I'm not going to do it.
No, forget it.
And business class was also fantastic. It was a great experience. The food was amazing. The crew was amazing. I slept like a baby. So meaning that it's not only because I had this out-of-world experience in front of the cabin that I appreciated Garuda. I think that, at least because I've not flown economy, so I cannot judge, I think that in these two parts, it actually is solid. For the 777, I will encourage people to try it. For the other more local flights, yeah, probably, of course, a Singapore and a Cathay are still way better, but it's going there. So I encourage you guys to fly it. And if you have actually flown it, let us know by messaging us if you have actually have other, maybe different experience than me, because Alex has to do it still.
Yeah, I can't wait to do it.
Let's do the airport. We have more news for next episode, which will be recorded before the end of this month. We promise you that. So Soe Karno Hata. I'm really sorry. I don't know how to pronounce that. I've only visited Terminal 3. Have you ever been, Alex, to that airport yourself?
I have not.
Have you ever been to Indonesia at all?
Nope, never. No, I've never been to Indonesia.
Oh, but you knew the beer when I told you Bintang.
Yes, because you can get that in Borneo as well, where I have been.
I've never been to Borneo. Very good beer. I had that beer. But that was, by the way, the only alcoholic choice in the lounge, because, again, it's a Muslim country, and I was like, will it be dry or not? The plane was not dry. The lounge was not dry, but you had to ask for it. And I think there was also wine. No champagne, though, which for me is a glaring omission. As you understood, guys, I like my champagne. I don't really drink champagne in any other capacity in my life. Only when I fly and I get to get it, I just like it. I only visited Terminal 3, as I said, the ultimate terminal. Half of it is international, half of it is domestic. It's for Garuda, and they will onboard a few of the other SkyTeam members there, like Air France and KLM. Apparently, it's much better than the experience you have at the two older terminals. The other terminals were shaped like two U's, reversed to each other. This one is like a very long terminal, like all terminals are being done nowadays. You have to do, like, Southeast Asia, there's two security, like the first to get into the terminal and then the actual security to get airside. So that's something that you have to pay attention to when you get there, because traffic in Jakarta might be the worst traffic in the world. It's really, really, really bad. The experience is not complete, as I said. Why? It looks like the terminal is not finished. I think it's actually not finished. Only gates 5 to 10 are open on the international sites. It's only 5 gates. It's really small, actually. All the other gates are closed off. You cannot even see them. They put like a temporary wall to hide them.
Right.
On the side of the domestic, which I just could see, I couldn't get, of course, into. This is really busy because, again, Indonesia is a big country and a lot. This is really busy. The international side is way less busy, which is nice for us, but it feels like it's incomplete. So it's hard to make a judgment on how it will feel once it is actually complete, but it is a nice terminal. I just feel that it's like you said earlier, it feels that the seamlessness, it's like the Lufthansa livery. It still needs to be thought out and analyzed.
Exactly.
It's not fully there. And I think they will get there because they're very proud of it. There's one thing very interesting outside. There's actually sort of a sky train. And the sky train is really included in the layout of the airports. It's very easy to get to. It's like a monorail, if you want, Alex. And that's actually really well done compared to where I was recently in Manchester, when you seem to have to walk 25 minutes just to reach the train station. Now, saying that, it is not Singapore, it is not Hong Kong. This is not yet that kind of airport. It could be it. It's not there. You could feel that, for instance, you have these massive white walls. There's nothing on it. It feels like, okay, there should be a shop here or something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So hard time for me to be judging, but the experience I had were both good. The layout is clear. Because maybe there's only 5 gates, it's actually super fast to clear the airport, which is great, because then you'll have like 22 hours of traffic to fight through to get to the city, which is, it's the second, the second biggest metropolitan city in the world, if you count the metro, after Tokyo, right? So we're talking, 25 million people to 30 million people. It's one of the densest cities on earth. We're talking about something clearly absolutely massive. It deserves a big airport. It's not there yet, but I would recommend it. I would say if you do a layover, you'll probably have a good enough time. I've not done the transition from international to domestic, which I think most people will have to do, because when people fly to Indonesia, they fly to Bali, because everybody's it's a digital nomad nowadays, and they need to go to Bali, and I'll end on that, I think could be a way forward to Garuda and this airport. It's super well placed for Australia. When you look at the map, you do 14 hours and then you have a relatively short flight compared to it, and you are in a direct line in Australia. Whereas when you do Dubai, when you do Singapore, you slightly reroute. So I think that could be a very good business model for Garuda if they push there. There you go.
I never thought we would be having this conversation, frankly.
I'll fly them again.
Yeah?
Yeah, because of the price. Again, I didn't take them. There was flights I needed to go to Bangkok, business class. Again, it's too long. Of course, I know you can go for a shorter route, but we're talking about the same price, like 1,200 for business class to Bangkok. What is that?
That's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, that's how Emirates hooked me at the very beginning, because I had fares that made no sense whatsoever, and I got upgraded in first class, and that's why I kept being with Emirates. I'm not saying that every airline can do it, but man, there's something to it. March 8th, are you flying in somewhere soon?
In 2 weeks, 2 and a little bit weeks, the whole family, we're going to Seoul.
Oh, yeah!
And Tokyo, so we're looking forward to that.
Let's try to record before that.
I'm sure we will.
There are a few things I want to say about Seoul, because I've been there now. That is also because they just opened Terminal 2, so it's a very interesting discussion we could have.
Yes, I've been looking into that.
And as for me, it will probably also be just the same time as you, or Dubai for sure, Kuala Lumpur certainly, but not entirely sure yet. I'll probably know by tomorrow. So we'll be talking about that and more. Sorry I was babbling away about Garuda. The signature beverage is the Ambarella juice. If you don't know what that is, well, there you go. You have to fly them.
I'm very jealous. Now I have to. You set the bar very high.
Safe travels, guys.